Hello and welcome to the West Asia Post with me, Ghadi Francis. Eid al-Fitr was supposed to be a peaceful one in the region this year, but in Jerusalem, clashes broke out just days after Eid. The reason is the return of Jewish worshippers to Al-Aqsa mosque. Jews returned to the mosque for the first time this month. Now, Palestinians have been angered by the uptick of Jewish visits. They fear that this is an assault on the status quo of Al-Aqsa mosque. We tell you more.
It was just 2 days after Eid, but the scenes at the Al-Aqsa mosque were a stark reminder. Peace is hard to come by at this flashpoint as Israeli forces stormed the compound. The reason for the tensions was this: the entry of Jewish worshippers in Al-Aqsa. For Palestinians, this is an assault on the status quo.
The soldiers of the occupation are at the doors of Al-Aqsa, as well as inside the compound. What we ask from Palestinian people is to come to Al-Aqsa, and what we ask from the Islamic and Arab countries is to feel concerned with what is happening at the mosque here.
The Al-Aqsa mosque is located in the old city of Jerusalem, a silver-domed mosque inside the 35-acre compound. This complex is referred to as Al-Haram Al-Sharif, or the noble sanctuary by Muslims. It is Islam's third holiest site. But the location is also considered holy in Judaism. For Jews, it is known by the name of Temple Mount. Jews believe the compound is where the biblical Jewish temples once stood. Since decades, it has been a flashpoint, the most contested territory in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Currently, Jordan acts as the custodian of Al-Aqsa. On the other hand, Israel controls external security. Non-Muslims are allowed onto the site during visiting hours, but they are not allowed to pray here. So the entry of Jewish worshippers has always been an issue of contention. Last week, Hamas had a warning for Israel. They threatened them with rockets and synagogue attacks if Israeli forces carried out further raids on the site.
Al-Aqsa is in danger, and a real danger. Our nation must be ready to defend the Al-Aqsa mosque and Jerusalem.
Israel, on the other hand, maintains that it will not change the status quo. But this has not satisfied the other stakeholders. Palestine calls this a declaration of a religious war. Meanwhile, Jordan slammed Israel for allowing Jewish extremists into Al-Aqsa. Since the second Intifada, every 6 months we hear about a new one. Intifada means an uprising or rebellion. The first one was a series of spontaneous Palestinian demonstrations. The second one in the 2000s was far bloodier. It grew out of the collapse of the peace process triggered by the provocative visit of Ariel Sharon to Al-Aqsa. Many call the recent violence the beginning of a third Intifada. This is because the Palestinians are tired. They have no strong leadership, and the Arab world has abandoned them. Currently, the situation is gradually towards an escalation. The conditions are ripe for an explosion. Will this lead to an all-out war again? Only time will tell. West Asia Bureau, WION, World is One.
From Lebanon to Saudi Arabia, we have a lot more lined up for you in this edition of the West Asia Post. But first, let's take a look at what else is making the headlines across the region.
Turkey's official inflation rate has soared to nearly 70% in April. This poses a huge challenge to President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and his re-election bid. One person died in Iraq and more than 5,000 are hospitalized for respiratory ailments due to sandstorms. This comes as Iraq remains engulfed by dust storms. The United Nations has demanded the immediate release of 2 staff members held by Houthi rebels in Yemen since November. The agency says their whereabouts remain unknown. Iraqi Prime Minister Mustafa al-Kadhimi says an end to years of tensions between regional rivals Iran and Saudi Arabia is near. This comes after Iraq has hosted 5 rounds of talks between Tehran and Riyadh. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan says Ankara was aiming to encourage 1 million Syrian refugees to return to their country by building them housing and local infrastructure there.
It looks like there's a thaw in the US-Saudi relations. US spymaster William Burns visited Jeddah in April. This top-secret visit has raised many eyebrows. Apparently, he even had a good conversation with the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. So, does this mean that the US and Saudi Arabia are finally burying the hatchet? We tell you more.
In April, Saudi Arabia had an unexpected visitor. William Burns, the director of the US Central Intelligence Agency. He landed in Jeddah. He met the Crown Prince and discussed a range of issues. Seems simple, but this was a top-secret visit. Details of the visit are not available, but some reports suggest they discussed everything from the Russian invasion to the oil production. Even the war in Yemen is said to have been featured in the talks. So why was the US spymaster suddenly in Saudi Arabia? Saudi Arabia has been a US ally for over 70 years. The two countries have had a security for oil relationship. It began 8 decades ago with Franklin D. Roosevelt and King Ibn Saud. This relationship lasted through 14 US presidencies until Biden. Under the Biden presidency, everything changed. He did not call Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. He released declassified intelligence reports on Khashoggi's killing and documents looking into Saudi's connection to the 9/11 attacks. Since then, the US-Saudi relationship has been on the rocks. The traditionally strong alliance had hit a rough patch. US has since been trying to improve relations, but the initial response from the Saudis has been cool. However, it looks like Burns and MBS had what is being called a good conversation. Better than what most US official engagements have been. Not just that, US has also ended a 15-month-long diplomatic snub. Biden has named a US ambassador to Riyadh. He chose Michael Ratney for the position. Ratney is the career diplomat with a lot of experience in the region. So why is Washington suddenly pivoting hard? The Russian invasion has thrown up new geopolitical realities. US needs Saudi Arabia for oil again. Riyadh needs Washington for defense and security again. Another reason is Saudi's deepening ties with both Russia and China. Riyadh has signaled it wants closer ties with Beijing. The kingdom even invited the Chinese president to visit this year. Reports suggest the two nations are even in talks to price some crude it sells to China in yuan. If Saudi Arabia does that, it will change the dynamics of the forex market. The move might even prompt other buyers to follow. All of the latest developments signal a thaw in relations. A bid to get the vital strategic alliance back on track. Biden and the Crown Prince may not like each other, but they have realized they need each other. Will US and Saudi Arabia finally bury the hatchet? Only time will tell. West Asia Bureau, WION, World is One.
Lebanon is about a week away from the parliamentary elections. It comes as the country is going through its worst economic crisis in decades. Will the elections really change anything and give any hope for the country, or will it be yet another failure? To decode the elections, I spoke to Dr. Safiya Saadi, a professor in sociology, an activist and an author about the Lebanese system. Take a look. Dr. Safiya, hello. The elections are upcoming in a few days in Lebanon, and many statistic companies and studies are showing that a big percentage of the Lebanese people are boycotting the upcoming elections. I know you boycotted, you have always boycotted the elections in Lebanon. Why do you do that?
Yes, it's true that lots of people are thinking of boycotting the elections for different reasons. They don't all agree on the same reasons on why they are boycotting the election. Personally, I boycott the elections usually from the beginning because I'm against the sectarian system. The setup of the Lebanese system is based on religious sects, which is very similar to the Indian caste system. And the stratification of the sects is also the same in accordance with the caste system from upper to lower. What is represented as being better sects and worse sects in degradation. That was started by the Ottoman Empire, which put the Sunni at the top of the stratification level. And in Lebanon, we moved this to the Maronite. And so we have fixed positions for fixed caste systems. You will have a Maronite president of the republic no matter what. You cannot have somebody from another caste or sect. And the same for the prime minister and the same for the head of the parliament. So I boycott because I'm a person who believes in citizenship. I believe in the democratic system. I believe that we should be free to join, elect, on the basis of us as citizens and not on the basis of a caste or sectarian system. This is why I usually boycott. There are many people like me who boycott from the beginning, did boycott, are not enthusiastic about elections because we cannot change the system through elections and we are not allowed to have a referendum to change the system. In nation states, usually you have a referendum. Like, for example, in England last year, they asked people whether they want to remain within the European Union or leave the Union. This is a referendum. We don't have this in Lebanon because we are not within a democratic system.
So what is the problem with the Lebanese system as you articulated in the book?
In this area, we have the multi-sect based on the millet system. It's called the millet system under Ottoman rule, that we inherited this. And we inherited with it the personal status laws, which is that when we are born, we are put within the government puts us under religious sect, not under, let's say, your village, no, under your sect, whether you are Christian or Muslim and what kind of denomination you have. This has survived, and this is bringing a lot of division within the Fertile Crescent area. Division among the people within each state, like Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, or Jordan, even Palestine, because of this system that we inherited and that we refuse to change. India had that system. It moved to a democratic system within the past half century. We did that, unfortunately.
Since there's no way out, and you spoke a lot about a referendum, well, the elections will not change anything. So how will that system change?
Boycotting, I think, because you brought up this issue in the beginning, is not a solution for me because boycotting is passive. It is not something that is positive. You cannot change by boycotting. Unless 70% of the population boycotts, then this is like a revolution, a peaceful revolution, whereby you can impose change. But this is not happening. And the heads of sects are very clever. Before elections, they distribute services, they distribute money, and therefore people will show their allegiance to the sects rather than to the idea of having a citizen concept with a law, a rule of law. So the problem is very difficult to solve, I think.
Elon Musk, the new owner of Twitter, calls himself a free speech absolutist. Now this will come to test in West Asia. In this region, authoritarian governments use the platform to track their opponents and to spread misinformation. So, What will Elon Musk's ownership of Twitter mean for the future of the platform in West Asia? Take a look.
West Asia. It's a region where the state often controls the local media. So where do people go? To social media platforms. Millions here rely on social media for news and to express their opinions. Remember the 2011 Arab Spring protests? Twitter and Facebook played an outsized role in these protests. It was a time when online activism became mainstream. Protests were scheduled on social media. Videos went viral on these platforms and regimes were toppled on the ground. The Arab Spring is often dubbed as the Twitter or Facebook revolution. So what happens when Twitter is bought by a billionaire? One with his own ideas of free speech and ethics. Experts say Elon Musk's ownership could further aggravate Twitter's problems. Musk defines free speech as that which matches the law. But what if the law itself bans free speech?
Elon Musk's ownership of Twitter will simply aggravate the problems we see in the region. It will increase the likelihood that Twitter will be exploited as a tool of surveillance and repression. Simply because his idea of Twitter is so libertarian, his anything goes ideology will play into the hands of authoritarian states who will just manipulate Twitter to create fake accounts and to intimidate others under the guise of free speech.
Saudi Arabia and other Gulf Arab monarchies do not tolerate dissent. They ban political parties and protests. Most of them use cybercrime laws to limit expression online. Abdullah Alaud is familiar with these consequences. He is the son of prominent Saudi Islamist preacher Salman Al-Auda. In 2017, he posted something on Twitter. The tweet urged Qatar and Saudi Arabia to end a diplomatic row. Hours later, he was arrested from his home.
Twitter should be harder to infiltrate because we remember that case of Ali Al-Zabara, Buammu, the cases where even the FBI investigated and then persecuted people because actually the FBI prosecuted people because they were planted as spies for the Saudi government and to share information and data of users that were later arrested in Saudi Arabia. So this is like a huge violation, and Twitter should take it seriously.
Musk's ownership could mean problems for social media users here, especially the new changes that he wants to bring in. One of them is to authenticate all human accounts of Twitter. This is detrimental for thousands of activists. Most of them use Twitter anonymously. Some believe Musk's ownership could even mean more crackdown, that his policies could play into the hands of authoritarian states. So if anonymous accounts are removed, this could be the end of pro-democracy events here. West Asia Bureau, WION, World is One.
West Asia marked Eid al-Fitr for the first time this year after the easing of COVID-19 restrictions. In our next report, we bring you a roundup of Eid al-Fitr across West Asia.
اللهم أهل الكبرياء وأهل الجود والجبروت وأهل العفو وأن تنزلني
West Asia is not without its share of culture, beauty, and oddities. In our next segment, Curiosities, we bring you some heartwarming stories from the region.
كسر بجمع 10 زائد 12 22 على 15. هاي هي الجواب النهائي. سهل. الجمع من اختار الموسيقى اللي ضرب ايش؟ فين؟ يا جماعة اليوم جبت لكم طريقة جمع من كوكب آخر. خلينا نشوف 6 12 9 و7 16. طلع كيف؟
That's all we have for you on this episode of the West Asia Post. I will see you next week with a brand new lineup, bringing you more stories from the world's most volatile region. Until then, stay safe. I am Ghadi Francis coming to you from Beirut, Lebanon, and you're watching WION. World is One.